Hi guys, okay, thank you. Well, let's do this. So I've got 25 minutes to ram a lot of ideas around your throat about disruption. Here's what's interesting. I'm going to do this in the context of three things. Let's talk about culture, code, and creativity. And I'm going to pick up from where David Sable left off, who is a living bloody legend. But here's the cool thing about where we need to head. This is culture. Just, you know, it's intimate. There's only a few of us in the room. Who had one of these when they grew up? Show of hands. Awesome. Who still uses it? Awesome. That in your rollerblades. Here's what's fascinating. This is an example of a company that's all culture, no code. These guys, unbelievably, had a great piece of cultural technology that had a terrible interface, and they obviously were taken over by somebody like Apple. Here's a great example of a company that's all code, no culture. So if you don't want to have any friends during the day, and Google are great, no doubt, man, but if you don't want any friends at the end of the day, wear a pair of these around. Because I guarantee you'll have no friends at the end of the day. And this is an example of all code, no culture. This is not the culture of humans. However, code allows you to have global instances. Now, you guys have heard a conference where there's something like 90,000 people at this bloody city looking at a lot of gadgets and a lot of technology. But what's amazing about it is code does allow you to build global instances. But what I love is local culture. Love local culture. The reason for that, it translates more directly. Here's an example of that. Now, in Ghana, this is a popular drink. But everywhere else in the world, pea cola probably doesn't translate very well. I'm not up for a mouthful of pea cola in the morning. It's not really my bag. But let's think about this. The most overused word that I've heard last year was this bloody thing. Disruption. How often do you hear this bloody word? And here's the problem. When I say to people, hey, well, that's great. How are you going to disrupt? They're like, well, we use technology. Bullshit. You cannot use technology to disrupt. You have to be prepared to disrupt your business. Every single business that David Sable talked about prior to this was all about disruption using technology. And we've got plenty of examples that you guys all know about and use. However, here's what's challenging. Understanding human needs is half the job of meeting it. Now, look, it doesn't matter whether you guys stand at a whiteboard on a Monday morning and go, look, who are we trying to target as people? It doesn't matter whether you use this as psychographic quadrants, or whether you decide, let's go higher purpose, let's talk about Maslow's rule of hierarchy. It doesn't matter if you use either one of those methods. You have to understand that technology is absolutely changing our behavior, but not our human need. I don't know what the equivalent of human need is everywhere else, but this is the one that translates best for me. 3D Tinder, you scumbags. This is a very good example of human need. So what's fascinating is the connected human. Now, when people talk to me about the connected human, the first thing I want to know about is this dude. Now, the challenge is, this is not really the connected human in my mind, but how good is this GIF? If nothing else, I give you this for lunch. So what's fascinating, though, about the connected human is this. People say, well, let's talk about the Internet of Things. If you walk over to the main areas back there, you're going to want to know about this IoT, but it's the Internet of everything. Everything that you're wearing that's on your person, that's on your body, is now interconnected. So there's interconnected connectedness, crazy stuff. Now, why? I'll tell you why. It's a $19 trillion business, according to Cisco, by 2020. And it's also incredibly beautiful. A lot of things now are beautified. One of the themes you'll see around technology is beautification. There's no need for ugly technology anymore. Beautiful, 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 because beautiful design has been democratized. So let's talk about it. Wearables is another big category when people talk about, oh, measure. We're going to measure everything using wearables. Great. What are you going to do with that? Because if you think about it, there's 290 wearables just in fitness alone. And don't kid yourself, they're everywhere in our body. And it's incredible because we're not just putting them on our wrist, not just putting them on our face, we're putting them everywhere and on our cats and dogs. Now, where I find this remarkable is it limited to our wrist and our face? No. Here's something that shows me that it will probably move on forward. Could I get some sound, please? Could I have some sound, guys? So much better with sound. No, fuck it, no sound. But here's what's interesting about this thing. This is a chip embedded into a suit. And what you're able to do is scan across something like a payment system, and you're able to automatically make payments. So people like Samsung, et cetera, that are trying to build out wallets, these are being built into the fabric of your suits. If we could get the sound to work, it's going to be so much better. But for now, you've also got this. So in Australia, they're trialing sensor-plated technology. So in my wearables, when I'm wearing this clothing, every single piece of clothing here has a vibration system in it. So while I'm watching television, I can actually feel what the player's feeling. This is immersive content. This is what people are trying to do to try and make the experience so much more immersive. But is it humanizing? I'm not sure. Let's think about it. Let's move forward. Everything has built-in intelligence. Everything you're wearing on your person or you have in your home is now measuring everything. Everything has built-in intelligence, and it's sending signals where you want it, why you want it, how you want it, and packaged in the way that you want it. And really what's happening is that as more and more wearables that we carry have screens on them, here comes the wearable web. And what's fascinating about the wearable web was that, when we used to have cinema, that was easy. We used to translate things in cinema, but if you go from cinema to TV, to desktop, the aspect ratio is the same. But when you go to things like the new mobile devices, clearly we've got a different aspect ratio. And then you've got this sort of thing. And now we've got this sort of thing. So how are you delivering content in the way that these things are delivered? And now we have square, rectangular, round, circular. We have all these different shapes and sizes, and you have to think about the delivery of information differently. That's the fundamental disruptions that's happening, is how you're delivering things to these different screen devices that are all based on ecosystems. 360-degree view. People want to see how things are interconnected. So it's less about things that feel like that are just immersive screens in your homes or on your wrists. It's also part of auto. So what you'll be seeing is a lot more of these screens that feel like there's a contiguousness from going from home to transport to life. All of these things are starting to feel very seamless. And that's an example of VW. In 2011, I said the car was a 16-foot mobile. Well, hasn't that changed? It is now just an extended experience from what you do in your home life. And then you think about robotics. What's going on with robotics with disruption? Well, when I think about robotics, actually, I think about this. This is a video I think about all the time for disruption. When people say to me, man, robotics are going to take over the world, I think of this thing, because that's really where I feel like robotics really are today. However, this gives me faith. This comes from Cambridge. This is an example of a robot that's actually building a robot. Pretty amazing. So we are seeing robotics move to be advanced systems, but there's also sensors. So all of these hard physical technologies are being extended through sense. And I'm not talking about this. Everybody should try these goggles on. I'm a bit bullish on VR just because it feels like an individual experience, and I like collective experiences. So I love the idea of what technology can be done with sensors, which are absolutely tiny. So as creators, when you think about content, if the world of VR takes off, it's not the goggle that's interesting, it's actually watching people with the goggles on, the whole, hey. But what's interesting about it is the sensors that's going to happen around the experience. This is an example of something that's very, very beta. These are sensors on the inside of virtual reality goggles that sense your emotion. So if I sense that you're smiling, perhaps I can change the content. If I feel that you're sad, perhaps I can change this. So think about choose your own ending. The ultimate way of producing that is going to be very, very interesting moving forward if you've got this immersive content. Here's the other beautiful thing about VR today, by the way. If you go and spend 2 hours watching a film, it's a director's point of view. If you actually go and put VR on, you are the director. So as a content producer, you need to think about ways that you are going to direct content when somebody has complete control of the viewing experience. But I do believe it's about less cool, shiny objects, and it's more about practical services. It's that transparent layer of things that are connecting things together that makes you feel like you're making decisions, but it's all done organically for you. Okay, so you're asking yourself, so what? Well, here's what's interesting. I believe that we're in the business of sight, sound, and motion to create emotion. Why? 75% of purchase decisions today are made emotionally. And times have changed since I grew up. So I'm from Australia. If you guys are wondering about my accent, that's where I'm from. That's the town I grew up in. This is the house I grew up in. This is my family. I'm one of 10 children. That's 12 people in a 2-bedroom house and lots of therapy. But what's fascinating is that I'm of the generation that at 17, when you bought your first car, like this was, that's when I felt freedom, independence, and self-expression. But today, kids are born connected, aren't they? 37% of children under the age of 2 can operate your swiping devices. And when they play with analog, they think it's broken. And I don't have kids, so I could watch this all day. Bless them. Isn't that right? But here's what's interesting. It's no longer about consumers consuming content. Those days are well over. What we've got now is a creator, a curator, and a critic of their own experiences. And it's fascinating because every one of these people today believe they're the /gen, /blogger, /DJ, /fashionista. It goes on and on and on. They have more tools, more empowerment, more confidence, and more brand alignment than any generation that I've ever seen before. And they're swarming to bright lights. So just when you figured out where to communicate to this group, guess what, man? They swarm to somewhere else. And if there's one thing that's going to be disrupted, is more and more places for you to think about how you actually engage people. And that's part of the paradigm today, is engagement. So if we were to move on, the power of this is that your audience now has an audience. That's the value of the interconnected human network today. All right, but people still want to express themselves through selfie. And when I Google selfie, these are the sort of images I find. And then you've also got extreme selfies. So people are going to extremes to get the ultimate selfie. Here's an example of the second tallest building in Hong Kong. People are now doing extreme selfies. The challenge is this: there are more people dying from extreme selfies than shark attacks, which bothers me. So is this generation a throw up? No, they are not. They're very much a tribe. They're a collective generation that do what? They want to achieve happiness. They want to spend time with their family and friends. They want to be true to themselves and want to be financially stable. Guess what? These values of this generation are more closely aligned to their grandparents' generation than their parents' generation. They just have a different way of expressing it. But they're way too busy to get all the information from feeds, but they represent a massive marketing spend, about $2.45 trillion by 2025, and at that point they represent 75% of the workplace. But what's incredible about that is that that's why all brands want to market to them across the planet. They have a massive buying power. But here's what happens. Everybody tries to think it's about popularity. We all think, oh my God, we need a massive following. But kids are smarter than we are. They lock their network down. So when I go and speak to high schoolers, they all want to be friends, about 99% of them all have closed networks. So what's happening, guys, is the whole idea of closed networks is coming. And it's coming in a way that says this: if my value is more closely aligned to my grandparents and I'm way too busy, and this is the network that I'm now building, what's happening in that closed network is if they bring your brand into that place, that will enable you to have a deep, intimate relationship you don't have in the open web. And one of those reasons this is happening is there's a surge of insecurity today. The social web is not always a safe place. And brands that reflect back cultural change as marketing win. An example of a brand that does really well is Procter & Gamble. So they did this experience last year, which is an award-winning piece of work that reflected back how people feel about girls.
Now throw like a girl.
Aw.
So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
So it's a beautiful word. You can see what happens when you empower people. Before we burst into tears, I'll move on. But this is what's interesting. Everything that is mainstream is trying to become niche now. And everything that's niche is trying to become mainstream. So we've got this paradigm happening, which is as soon as you become popular, you need to go into a closed network. As soon as you're a closed network, you want to be popular. We're having this interesting paradigm today where we've moved away from broadcast information into social, where we're moving into interest. So those deep, intimate relationships that are closed are going to be very important to you moving forward based on need. So as we move to the paradigm of need, which is how do you act upon people's need as opposed to day parting or broadcast, that's when we move into a really interesting curated experience for people, which is amazing because the business that we're in is no longer advertising. In fact, content that you produce for brands today is competing against popular culture. Everybody with a phone today is now a photographer and a publisher, and that's what brands are competing against. And people's behaviors are now deeply intimate because they're influenced by their peers. And that's why we're looking for verbs. This is an example of Facebook trialing out different emojis. And if you think about these verbs, the ones that I like most is share. 70% of the global population will share stuff. The vast majority of shares have links, and that links go to what? Content you're building. So that's the power of what happens here. We all know that disruption has happened because of this device. And it's changed our behavior. We've already said that as the premise. But here's what's fascinating. It doesn't matter where I am or how I observe. The way that we're connected to this device intimately, it's more intimate than our human connections today. And it's also affecting our evolution of our human body, because there's a real problem there, which is tech neck. All of that thing that we're doing is creating a real issue with our physique. And so we act like adolescents on it. And then we treat it like an infant. We treat mobile like infants, which I think is total rubbish. In 1997, I used to be able to text message Coca-Cola and interact with their vending machines. It's time for you to experiment. And experimentation is necessary because if you think about it, this is a screen grab of a friend of mine's child's. It's a 15-year-old boy's data plan. There is 0 talk time on there. It is all about the utility that is on that visual controller. We should not call that thing a phone. And the younger generation are using on average 3 devices per day. The vast majority are, 87% of them are using 3 devices per day. They're looking to the mobile internet to distract them from being bored. A very large percentage of the online penetration are actually bored. So this generation online are bored tearless, and they look to the mobile web to save them. But it's all about apps to do it. They go to the internet to be entertained and informed. Very high numbers of people are trying to do this. Up, up, up. It's all about utility. But what are they doing on that device? It's no longer about the mobile web. It's about the apps. 88% of what people do on the mobile device is app-driven. Mobile web, no way. But you download fewer apps, you spend more time, more money on the ones you use. The average number of apps people have on their phone is 40. The average number we use is 5. So the challenge there is cut through, because most people will only try a mobile experience once. So where it becomes fascinating is this. If you're only using it once, you have to think about what the opportunity is. The opportunity is once somebody falls in love with you on that mobile device, they become a power user. And that moves the industry away from the one that I grew up in, which was about advertising, and it moves away from awareness to advocacy. Word of mouth, peer-to-peer. That's where we're going to have incredible power. And it's no longer just about mobile. We know about bloody mobile. It's about movement. It's about wherever you are. It's proximity. It's about immersion. And immersion comes from bendable screens. We've all seen this sort of technology. We've got these bendable screens. We all see immersion from this experience. We've got these incredible televisions that turn into bookshelves, or bookshelves that turn into televisions that rotate up and down based on where your eye levels are. So we've got incredible technology trying to immerse us. You've got augmented reality becoming even hotter than reality. So here's an example of a drone game. And you've also got things like this. Look at this. This is an augmented reality app that allows you to try on makeup instantaneously. And look how beautiful that is. It's wonderful experiences now. It's all about immersive. But it can also move you beyond retail, because these experiences make me want to have better gratification. It needs to be heightened. I need hyper gratification. And examples of that are super simple things where if people want retail disruption, here's an example of one. Domino's allows you to actually get pizza ordered by just sending out an emoji. And you've also got disruption happening here because 75% of what happens is that brands care about brands' ethos. So people who consume brands today care about the ethos of your brand. They want to know there's no slave labor. They want to know it's good for the environment. They care about brands so much that 75% of children under the age of 25 will switch on brands based on ethos. So you have to think about things differently. And what I mean by that is look to the data. Data creates creativity, and creativity does not exist without data. Both of them work symbiosisly today. But what data allows you to do is run scenarios with probable effect. Now, why is that? What it does, it allows you to create happenstance. You can look to the noise of data, but I would rather you look to the signal of data to figure out some of the things you should experience, because I believe it's about creativity over data. And if you think about it, it used to be about personalized data. It's now about contextual data. Where it needs to go to is predictive data. That's where things are going to be disrupted, and when it feels like we're moving into an experience that allows me to understand that you're delivering an experience to me knowing what I want. Because you understand that location will give you context, and context gives you data, and then allows you to deliver experience to people, and it feels like you're a friend. And it feels like you're doing things beautifully, and it doesn't feel like you're trying to disrupt them with advertising. So that hyper gratification really does allow you to triangulate. It knows exactly where you are to deliver some of those experiences. So I know exactly the seat that you're in. And they're the sort of things I would expect to see in these startup alleys as you go out there. Look for location, and especially when it comes to data. Your brand also needs to be an experience, guys. And this is where it becomes fascinating. An open experience, not closed. So a brand is best when it can be experienced amongst many, not just closed to a few in terms of its brand ethos. And let me explain that. You can reinvent your brand by simply looking at your products and changing them. Here's an example of one that I love. This is a brand called LG, which you all know. But in Korea, they have a product that allows you to snap the back of the phone, change the case, and it changes the personality of the phone. So it understands that people want hyper-personalized experiences. These are guys that are trying to lean into giving you a hyper-personalized experience on the phone so you feel like an individual and don't feel like the mass. Here's another example, Coca-Cola. They know that all of their products still end up in landfill. So what did they do? They changed all the bottle tops to be a brand useful now. Pencil sharpener, bubble blower, a water pistol. So now they're changing their brand and their product, which in itself becomes a new brand. Everyday hack. You know we're part of a maker culture today. You know that people want to do things and make things today. So as a brand, why don't we lean in and see if we can get inspired by it? This one inspires me. Check this workout.
In many countries, DHL has more locations, more vehicles, and more employees. That's why DHL is faster. However, to communicate this with a classic advertising campaign is expensive. So why couldn't the competitors advertise for DHL? For that purpose, giant packages were taped all over with thermoactive foil and cooled down below the freezing point. In this way, the competitors picked up a black package that transformed back at temperatures above freezing and delivered the message in the most beautiful colors.
How cool is that, man? Embracing the idea that there are hackers out there. So if we're thinking 4 years out, we better think more like 40 years out, because we're moving very quickly, the post-millennial. These young kids that people have been trying to harness are getting older. And so there's a new group coming out. These are some terms that are used for this group. And actually, they want to be called something unique, man, because they have this totally different ethos. They talk about things like acceptance and encouragement. Remember, their values are more closely aligned to their grandparents and their parents' generation. And they actually want to be called founders. There's a survey done recently that said, what would you like to be called as a group of people, as individuals? They said, we want to be founders. So if you don't believe in the maker culture, this thing is coming at us. So embrace what happens post-millennial. But one thing that I can tell you as I wrap this thing up, guys, is video will be everywhere. We will continue to love video. We're freaky for it. And we don't care whether it's short form or long form. We just want to be shown stuff. Steve Jobs has this quote, which I thought was amazing. Years ago, he came out with this quote. A lot of times people do not know what they want until you show them. That's the generation of what we are now of. You can tell stories in 6 seconds to however long you want to hold people's attention for. We've moved out of the world of 30-second TV spots and into a world that you can tell a story in 6 seconds. Check this thing out. 6 seconds. Amazing story to be told. But beyond disruption, the word that is totally overused in our industry is storytelling. And it is absolutely less about the telling and it's more about the story. And if you're able to put things in great context, you can end up with incredible experiences. So build good content, put it in smart places. It's easy for me to say. It's extremely hard to do. But here's a little example by a brand which I think is amazing. This is by Geico.
Thank the savings.
You can't skip this Geico ad because it's already over. Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
So here's what's beautiful. Here's an insurance company in the US who just said, you know what? We'll just come up with a 6-second ad. And then, everyone wants to skip quickly. Why don't we just let the cameras keep rolling? And they've got about 5 of these, and this goes on for about 2 minutes. And I got to tell you, man, I think this is bloody awesome. If this went on for 15 minutes, I suspect we'd all want to sit here and watch it through lunch. And I don't know about you guys, but that Geico logo looks pretty big to me, but nobody cares. It turns out that 67% of people don't care whether content is blatant or subtle. They just care about the story, how beautiful it's told. Isn't that great? But look, the reality is this. It's now about reframing. It's no longer enough to remix. We have to invent stuff. So innovation is out. It's all about remixing and reframing. We also need to find the right people, not necessarily celebrities. It's about the power of the influencer. Look for ecosystems of moments. So how do we interconnect all of these systems together, all of these services that feel like we're delivering all these beautiful moments for people? It's also about giving up our brand. So if you represent a big brand in the house, it's no longer yours. Consumers should own the brand and be the ambassador for it, because empower them to be the publisher of your brand. If you work for a physical company today, make sure that the marketing team and the digital teams and the product teams all come together, because nobody sees the difference between physical and digital anymore. There's no longer a translation between them. They feel like exactly the same brand ethos. And lastly, not everything that we do is going to be successful. So we have to go out there and pioneer. Pioneering means you're going to actually fail occasionally. You're going to fall. And you have to fall forward, because that's where stuff gets disrupted. So celebrate those things, make them happen. But ultimately, the reason why I love coming to speak to you cats and the reason why we're doing all this together, really ultimately is because if you obey all the rules, you miss all the fun. Enjoy your day. Take care. Thanks very much indeed. See you later.
Never wanna put my heart